Well, delighted to say we've reached the top of the hour, and I'd like to formally welcome everyone to today's webinar, Key Areas to Reduce Customer Effort. I'm Rachel, and I'm going to be your webinar chairperson today. We've got a jam-packed agenda for you today, and two brilliant speakers are joining me. Welcome to his first webinar with us, Mark Gould from CP2 Experience. Welcome.
Thank you, Rachel. It's great to be here with everyone this afternoon. I'm looking forward to it.
Fab. And I don't know whether you wanted to introduce yourself again for those people who've just joined us.
Yep, so I'm Mark Gould. I'm Managing Director in Ireland for CP2 Experience. We're a specialist customer experience consulting and training company, and we help our clients to improve their customer experience, to differentiate their brand, and in doing so create customer and employee advocacy that drives profitable growth.
Fab. Well, welcome, and hopefully a great webinar for you for your first webinar. And also delighted to welcome back Neil Titcombe from Odigo. Welcome back, Neil.
Thanks, Rachel. Great to be here.
Fab. And would you like to share a bit of an introduction as well?
Sure. My name's Neil Titcombe, and as I say, I'm from Odigo. I'm the Managing Director of Odigo UK. We're a service provider providing technology solutions into the enterprise contact center marketplace. Our solutions focus on employee and customer engagement, and again, a bit like Mark, aiming to always provide competitive advantage and improve productivity wherever possible.
Brilliant. Well, welcome as well. So before we get into the webinar, just a reminder that we are running a discussion in our chat room this week. So that's on callcenterhelper.com/chat, or you can use cch.chat as just a short term to get you in. It is in a separate window, but hopefully with today's big screens, you can put it side by side, or a lot of people like to put the chat room on their mobile phones. So a couple of added bonuses of being in the chat room. You can join in our quiz later on. The buttons are down the side here. You will come back to that in between the two presentations. Another added bonus of being in there is that you can download a copy of both our speakers' slides. Lots of information on both, lots of stats in both of them. So you just need to click the top link up there. And finally, we are running our champagne box of chocolates or an Amazon gift card for the best tip. You just need to use #question to ask our panel a question, or #tip to share your top tips and hopefully win. So before we get into today's presentations, I'd just like to put up a poll, which is, what is your most important key performance indicator or KPI? Is it sales, net promoter score, average call handling time, first contact resolution, customer effort score, repeat calls, or wait time? So I'm just going to launch that now. So Mark, what sort of one do you think is going to come out as the most important KPI?
I think there's likely to be quite a mix. Certainly the clients that we work with, depending on which industry and also depending on how developed they are within their customer experience program, have a mix. I'd certainly say average call handling time we've seen decline over recent years, and we're seeing more and more of our clients use customer effort score increasingly. But I would probably say net promoter score might be the most popular one. We shall see. Right,
so if I share the results, so first contact resolution 40%, then we've got net promoter score with 19%, joint third is sales and customer effort score with 12%, then wait time with 9%, and repeat calls joint last, repeat calls and average call handling time. So Mark, are you pleased with that result?
Well, I was wrong, but I'm pleased it's diverse, and I think first contact resolution is probably, given our audience, the right one to focus on.
Fab. So I think now's the perfect opportunity I'll stop sharing my screen and hand over the baton to you, Mark.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. Let's bring this up. There we go.
Brilliant.
Well, Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you this afternoon to talk about reducing customer effort in our organisations. So for the next 18, 20 minutes, what I'd like to do is talk about these four things. First of all, why and how we measure customer effort. And we saw from the quiz there that I think it's nearly half of you are actually measuring customer effort at the moment. What leads to a high customer effort? What are the things that create that customer effort, and how we can make things easier for customers to actually deal with us. And then we're also going to look at some top tips to reduce customer effort, and I'm sure that you will have some that you can share with the whole of the audience as well. So that's what we're going to talk about for the next while. First of all, the concept of customer effort was developed to understand how customer service organisations can increase customer loyalty. It was developed by Matthew Dixon, Karen Freeman and Nicholas Toman of Corporate Executive Board back in 2008. And they're now part of Gartner, and I'll be referring to a couple of pieces of Gartner research for that reason during my presentation. The HBR article that you see here actually explains it in a lot of detail and was published in July 2010. And I know that Rachel's going to share the link to that article for anybody that's interested in reading more on the subject.
Yep, we'll pop that in the chat room just now.
Correct. Dixon, Freeman and Toman concluded at the time that service interaction couldn't in fact increase customer loyalty, but it could decrease disloyalty. And reducing customer disloyalty is a critical role for customer service, and it's best achieved through low effort customer resolution. So measuring and reducing customer effort today remains a top priority for customer service teams. But what is customer effort? Well, customer effort is what happens when something is broken or just doesn't work very well. Customer effort is not just about the one task, but it's about the whole customer journey. And yet we find in organizations, they don't often improve their processes when they come across examples of high customer effort. But remember, customer effort isn't just about the effort to solve a problem. It's about avoiding the problem in the first place. So I want you to think about the last time you were really frustrated as a customer. It probably involved many steps. First, you would have bought into something. You made a purchase because you not only paid for it, but you believed in it. That product or service was going to help you, maybe make your life a little bit more convenient, secure, fun, healthy. You defined some specific return on this investment for yourself. Now, at some point, there's a problem. The thingamajig doesn't work as planned, or it broke after a single use, or setting up the service maybe wasn't as easy as the advertisement had promised. You tried to solve it. You maybe read the manual. Maybe you looked for answers on the organization's website. And several frustrating minutes or hours later, you probably reached out to the organization with a phone call or an email, maybe a text, a social media post, or a chat on the website. And for the sake of this example, let's say that your problem gets dealt with quickly and resolved by Brad here. Now, was this a win for the business, and was this a win for the customer? In this example, I think it could be seen as a win for the brand. It was a first contact resolution. There was no escalation required to actually fix the problem. Brad was pretty effective at that. And it would be seen as a service recovery that was done well. In fact, the customer might express relief and appreciation. And I'm sure that the transactional survey results would reflect how Brad did a great job in serving this customer's problem. But then time moves on, and soon another customer repeats exactly the same steps. Brad or a colleague of his will be able to help, but the next customer and the one after that will have to go through just as much effort to get the answer that they couldn't find on their own. So for this reason, customer effort isn't just about the effort to solve the problem, it's about avoiding that problem happening in the first place. Now, many of you said that you are measuring customer effort today. Let's have a quick look at how that number is actually calculated and what it means. The customer question asked is typically, how easy was it to get the help that you needed today? And it's graded from easy to difficult. Here you see three options, sometimes 5 or 7 options are used in terms of degrees of difficulty. So if 100 customers respond to your question and 50 say it was easy, 20 say it was difficult, and the rest expressed no opinion or said neither, to get to your customer effort score, you'd subtract the 20% who said difficult from the 50% who said it was easy to get a customer effort score of 30. So that's how we arrive at the number. It's usually measured immediately after a customer interaction. And you could add a useful additional question by asking, why did you give that rating? And that would help you to understand the customer's rationale for the answer that they gave. But why do we measure customer effort? Well, it is a great customer churn indicator. Much research shows that it's a better indicator of loyalty than customer satisfaction. And we all know that retaining customers is a crucial task of any business. You create loyal customers by helping them to solve their problems. However, numerous research studies show customer service interactions are nearly 4 times more likely to lead to disloyalty than loyalty. This is because the customer started with a problem and all too often has to exert a lot of effort to resolve that problem. The measurement should be used in conjunction with customer satisfaction and NPS, which both have a role to play. That's because a customer may have a great relationship with your company, but had a bad interaction on this one occasion. If you only look at customer effort score, you would think that your customer wouldn't be loyal, but that might not be the case. The business case for effortless customer service is clear. This is Gartner research from last year that shows the likelihood of action between customers who reported high and low effort. So you can see that a low customer effort is an excellent indicator of customer intent to repurchase and increase their spending, whilst a high customer effort leads to a high likelihood of negative word of mouth and customer churn. So an effortless customer service experience is the key to customer loyalty. In our experience, many service organizations focus their proactive contact primarily on customers who have actively complained. This squeaky wheel strategy will only reach a small fraction of all the customers who have had high effort service experiences. Using customer effort as a risk indicator would enable an organization to shape its proactive contact strategy to capture all target customers and better mitigate churn. Also remember that customer effort is part do and part feel. When you think of effort in a service interaction, our first thoughts are always about the actions that a customer had to take. For example, did they have to call multiple times, or were they transferred to the right person? However, what a customer must do is only part of the effort question. Customers' interpretation of their interactions, how they feel about the interaction, also affects their perceptions of effort. The things they do, the exertion required by the customer, are affected by first contact resolution, the need to repeat information, experiencing a short or a long wait time, receiving a fast resolution to a service request or a problem. What customers feel, their subjective interpretation of their interaction, is dependent on a service that is flexible to individual needs, being informed about the process and guided through that process, and feeling that they were in control of that process while they're undergoing it, and also making sure that information that they required was easy to access. To reduce customer effort, leading organizations measure it, identify issues, prioritize customer service investments, create a low effort environment, and effectively manage self-service and multi-channel service. Now, there are many reasons for high customer effort in different organizations. So I want to look at three of the most common reasons: handovers, response time, and expectations, which we were mentioning a little bit earlier. So the handover. Customers interact with different departments at different stages throughout their journey. And in the earlier example, what do you think would have happened if Brad had needed to pass our problem with the thingamajig to technical support? We probably would have had to explain our problem all over again to another person and possibly give our personal details again. This takes longer, increases our frustration and the effort required to solve our issue. Remember, customers are customers because they've bought into you and bought into your brand. So don't let them down by making them do all of the work. Any kind of handover requires clear internal communication so that the customer doesn't need to explain their situation, timeframes, and other details to multiple departments. Seamless handovers result in the customer feeling that we're their partner for success. Response time. Now, we all know it's really important to respond to customers as quickly as possible, if for no other reason than to let them know our team is working on the issue and it matters. A recent Salesforce report found that 64% of consumers and 80% of business buyers expect companies to respond and interact with them in real time. So the clock is ticking. Certainly in my experience, anytime a customer needs to reach out for a status update on a project or a support ticket, they already consider that this is a high effort experience. Customers want their issues resolved quickly and they don't want to wait on the phone to talk to a live representative. If you have high wait times, you do need to use a callback system or employ more staff during your busiest hours. And setting expectations. Customers, unsurprisingly, aren't too keen on surprises. One way to avoid surprises is to set expectations early and often. This ultimately comes down to good communication. If we let our customers know from the outset what comes next, including timeframes, communication channels, and the expected outcome, we reduce the risk that outcomes will not meet their expectations. They should never be left wondering what or when the next step is. Key touch points such as onboarding and handovers to other departments are good opportunities to establish these expectations. So set yourself and your customers up for success. When you set expectations, you can expect a positive outcome. So how do we make things easier for our customers? Here are 8 areas for focus where certainly we've seen service organizations deliver positive results. The first one, align the performance management with the customer experience. We saw the usage of average call handling time, for instance, only at 5% as the most important metric, which is encouraging, because certainly we find that efficiency metrics such as average call handling time can dominate. And a number of organizations have shifted strategy from a customer focus to cost reduction in recent times. These are great at achieving performance results that don't involve customer satisfaction, which increasingly enforces advisors into a very robotic process. The best organizations, in our experience, focus on customer metrics like customer effort score. Focus on the employee experience to improve the customer experience. Certainly, you need to build a sense of pride, passion, and belonging in your team. And to do this, we recommend 3 key approaches. First, establish a clear purpose. People need to believe that their work and the aims of their organization matter. Next, give people the opportunity to realize their potential. They need to get something out of doing the work, whether that's personal development, satisfaction, reward, and recognition. And thirdly, give opportunities to play. Ensure that there's opportunities to contribute, experiment, be creative, and have some fun in their day-to-day work. you need to be really clear about what helping customers actually means. So your team members need to understand what it looks like before they can deliver it to the customer. And we usually recommend to our clients that they use a customer promise that includes a description of what a great experience looks and feels like for the customer, and what the team members need to do to actually enable that. The best advisors spend more time understanding customer needs, solving problems, and reaching genuine agreement with customers, as well as selling and finishing the call on a positive note. Less effective advisors, in our experience, spend more time controlling a call in order to get the customer off the line. Guess what performance indicator they're usually being judged on when they're behaving in that way? And empathy. The best advisors establish a more conversational, emotionally engaging experience for customers, which data shows moves customers from a functional loyalty into being loyal advocates. Now, we're often asked if empathy can be trained, and I think the answer is yes. Most human beings possess it. Quite often empathy is blunted in an organization, but it can be reignited. Give customers clarity. Give them all the information, not just guidance about where to find the information. Tell the customer what we'll do after they put the phone down and when the customer will hear from us again. Of course, be knowledgeable about all aspects of the business, but also the business sector that you're operating in. And this might be about pointing customers to helpful websites, not just the company website. And guide customers to the best channel to start their service request in order to manage the discrete things that they're going to have to do to resolve it. Okay, so those are our top 10 areas of focus to making things easier for customers. And I want to summarize by certainly my top 6 tips to reduce customer effort. First, keep language simple and precise. Don't use words like should or soon. For example, I'll let you know soon. Is that soon as in this afternoon, or is it soon as in early next week? Be precise and deliver. I'll get back to you before the end of the day. I'll let you know by noon tomorrow. Whatever it is, be specific. Avoid being vague at all costs, because ambiguity breeds dissatisfaction. Don't make customers have to give their details more than once. Why do we have to enter our details into an IVR platform, then invariably have to give them again to the advisor when they finally get to us, and then sit waiting on the phone while they re-enter our details and establish the background to our request? This should all be available through desktop integration. Asking for repeat information increases friction and effort for customers. Use a knowledge base for advisors and customers. Frequently asked questions should be searchable for advisors and customers. And in the best service organizations, we often see that they make large parts of their internal knowledge base available to customers publicly to ensure consistent information. Self-service databases, forums, and social networks can often resolve difficult customer issues. And this also often reduces average call length. Don't focus on average call handling time. I'm pleased to see that 95% of you don't. Certainly performance measurement based on average call handling time offers little business value in our experience. It often results in unintended consequences like repeated contacts, which result in an increase in customer effort. In this poll earlier, you told that average handling time was one of the smallest in the list of important KPIs. So I'm glad to see that you're not focusing here, because if you do, that will not be a way to reduce customer effort. Multi-skill your advisors. Now, at the moment, quite often teams will operate in silos because they're specialists in solving complex problems. However, this approach often relies on customers conducting their own triage on an IVR prior to being placed in the queue for a specialist team. Again, when we've seen great multidisciplined advisors they're more likely to solve a high proportion of service issues on first contact and then hand over customers to the correct specialist when a more complex solution is required. And finally, number 6, guide your customer. Your customer does not know where they're going and often don't know what the outcome is desired or will be. So you need to set those expectations at the very beginning. What is the result and benefit going to be for the customer? How long is this going to take? What are the key stages? And then check in along the way that the customer understands, is okay, and how much longer this is going to take. In this way, even where some customer effort is required, the customer's prepared, and in the best cases will feel that you're a trusted guide. And I'm sure many of our audience have got many more tips for reducing customer effort, so I'd encourage you to share them with everybody on the webinar this afternoon. So with that, thank you, and I'll hand you back to Rachel.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Mark. Some brilliant takeaways, which I'll come back to shortly. So we are coming to our quiz. So just a reminder, you do need to be in our chat room to take part. It's callcenterhelper.com/chat, or just type in cch.chat. It is in a separate window, but you could do it on the mobile phone and take part. Maybe while you're in the chat room, you can share in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about Mark's presentation? For me, some great takeaways. I mean, obviously you had a huge list of top tips and your how to make things easier and things, but I liked, you know, reducing disloyalty is a critical role for customer service and best executed through low effort resolution of customer issues. Measuring and reducing customer effort remains a top priority for customer service, but the way customers interact with customer service has changed in the last 10 years, you know, all the new different channels and everything. So how are you going to do that? And high customer effort, you know, what leads to it? Handoffs, response time and expectations. So places to really focus your efforts. So thank you very much for that, Mark. So coming over to our quiz, just a reminder, the buttons to take part are at the bottom of the chat room, and to vote you just need to click on the appropriate button with the answer. So let me take us over to our quiz, and yep, so I can see we've got most of the audience in, so last chance to take part. There is a bottle of champagne or box of chocolates for the winner of the quiz every week, sending out lots of champagne. So yeah, you do just need to click the buttons for the right answer. So last chance, I'm going to click start. So true or false, 96% of customers going through a high level of effort are likely to churn. Is it A, true, or B, false? So true or false, 96% of customers going through a high level of effort are likely to churn. Is it A, true, or B, false? So we'll give you a little bit of time. Last chance. Right, so most of you getting that right. Yes, the answer is A, true. The stat comes from a CEB report that also found that only 9% of customers who went through an effortless experience are likely to churn. Alex is coming out in top at the moment. So second question, what is the most common method of supporting an advisor who is struggling on a call? A, let them add an additional channel to the conversation. B, let them change the channel. C, let them schedule a follow-up call or email. Or D, let them transfer to another remote agent without a queue. So this is what is the most common method of supporting an advisor who is struggling on a call. So is it A, let them add an additional channel to the conversation. B, let them change the channel. C, let them schedule a follow-up call or email. Or D, let them transfer to another remote agent without a queue. So last chance. So yeah, most people getting that one right. It is C, let them schedule a follow-up call or email. So this was according to a call center helper call center helper report. 68% of contact centers allow struggling agents to schedule a follow-up call, although all the options can lower customer effort. So a slight change at the top. So third question, which of the following is a metric that many contact centers use to calculate customer effort? Was it A, net easy, B, net quick, C, net simple, or D, net speed? So which of the following is a metric that many contact centers use to calculate customer effort? Is it A, net easy, B, net quick, C, net simple, or D, net speed? So last chance. Right. So yeah, most people getting that one correct. It is a net easy, which involves advisors asking customers, how easy did you find it on a scale chosen by the contact center, and asking, why did you give us that score? So, another change. So last question, last chance. What percentage of contact centers actively measure customer effort? Is it 8.2%? B, 28.2%, C, 48.2%, or D, 68.2%. So that's what percentage of contact centers actively measure customer effort. So 8.2%, 28.2%, C, 48.2%, or D, 68.2%. Bit of a tongue twister, that one. So last question. And most people getting that right. The correct answer is C, 48.2%. So this is from our brand new call center helper survey that will be released later on this month. So as of autumn 2020, 48.2% of contact centers were measuring customer effort. And that was up from 35.8% in 2016. So look out for that new research coming up. And the winner is Claire41. Congratulations, Claire. We will be in touch after the webinar. So to go back over to our top tips, the chat room's been buzzing along, so I will share with you some top tips. So Alex has sent in saying, you can only effectively reduce customer effort in conversations if you first reduce your employees' effort when supporting them. Review processes, ask them how to make things a little simpler for them. This then positively translates to the customer experience as well as ENPS. Neil, what are your thoughts on that one? Put you on the spot with the...
I was about to note that down because I couldn't agree more. If you
Okay.
put roadblocks in place of accessing information to the agent, it's obviously going to make the whole engagement more complex and more time consuming. So it's easy to sort of put the obvious measure around how to open the door and make it more frictionless for the customer to get through. But obviously part of this is down to the agent and the information they've got available to them to make that interaction as frictionless and as quick as possible. So yeah, I completely support that point of view.
Fab, thank you. So Claire sent in a tip saying, don't assume that making things easier for your staff will also make things easier for your customers. Mike, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think it is an enabler. And we do a lot of work with financial services companies who seem to create a labyrinth of different systems that agents need to work between to try and understand a customer's issue. Right, even with an integrated system, that alone won't actually make things easier for customers. It does need to be trained, and some of the tips I was talking about earlier, having empathy with the customer, understanding underlying reasons for their service request also comes into it. I think multiple systems and making things easier for the employee is part of the suite of things that you need to do.
Thank you. So we've had an opinion from Susie, who said Mark's point about soon being when was spot on. Is soon this afternoon or end of the week? Such a vital thing that people often overlook when they're training agents or trying to deflect. So great there, Mark. So we've had a question in, which is, what are typically some of the biggest sources of customer effort in a call centre? Mark, I'm not sure if you wanted to take this question.
Yeah, well, I indicated some of them in terms of the effort. I think lots of wait time and particularly in recent months, I think the frustration of increasing wait times from consumers has become very obvious. And I think quite often it's talking to somebody that hasn't got the knowledge required to both understand, first of all, a customer's requirement or how to actually resolve it. Those would be the things that really requires a lot of effort on behalf of the customer, or indeed sending the customer away to resolve it somewhere else because I'm not the right person to talk to. So I think those are the things that we see time and time again occurring in lots of different industries.
Yeah, Neil, you're nodding. Anything more to add?
Yeah, I can just think of a couple of situations personally where I've had the agent say, well, because I'm working from home, I don't have access to that system or that information. And it just exasperates the situation that they're in. And obviously is challenging for the customer to hear, because they've already waited probably an unnecessary for them length of time to get to be told that. So yeah, measured in many ways, and it is again perception. How long is too long? And I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. But yeah, I would add that.
Fab. I think we've got time for one last question, which is, can anyone recommend a good knowledge-based solution? We've had so many touch points. Ensuring customer-facing teams have up-to-date information is challenging. Neil, any?
I can't think of one off the top of my head, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I would absolutely wholeheartedly agree. Knowledge is so important, and many of our clients come with a similar quandary. But it's not my area of expertise, I must admit. I don't know whether Mark's got any that you would actually name, but certainly not underestimating the importance.
But I've seen lots of different types of technology, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend one over another. But what some of the best solutions I've seen are actually just using Google connected to an organization's website, which means when an agent is Googling the answer, I think they're seeing exactly the same information that a customer would when they're Googling external to the organization. And I think getting that same information wherever possible is the best solution, whatever type of technology you use.
Fab. Well, I think now's the perfect chance to hand over to Neil for your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Let me just tee up my slides. Okay, can everybody see that?
I can, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Mark. So I'd like to put a slightly different angle onto the topic, and from Odigo's perspective, talk about how we're managing changing customer expectations around effort. As I mentioned, Odigo's clients come to us with the brief that is moreover, how do I improve what we've done for so long, because my customers are demanding more of us that we can no longer meet those challenges. And that's born from all sorts of different eventualities, but more recently around a shift in expectation from a more broader demographic, and obviously the explosion of customer contact choices that we now have available to us, and the shift to digital across the real of the entire consumer spectrum. To put some context to it, we recently published a report in partnership with the CCMA, and just last week, in fact, where we actually did a study back in September across 500 people through a very specific window of time, asking them a series of questions around their interaction habits. And it revealed some really interesting findings around consumer trends and expectations, some of which, as I say, I think will be quite relevant to this particular topic. And of course, being through September was very much in and amongst the pandemic, not actually in lockdown at that point, but that's certainly in the different normal we have at the moment. And we showcased those findings with a number of different brands, as you can see on the screen there. And it was really quite insightful in terms of just how things are changing and how expectations differ depending upon where you are in the country, the marketplace you're trying to contact in time in terms of business vertical, your demographic, and of course the channel you might be looking to use. So if I just go into the the first slide, you might not be of any surprise to learn that across that period of time, 46% of the people polled had indeed contacted a a brand or service provider by phone. So no real shock there. What's interesting though is just how that plays out through the other channels by comparison. What we do know, of course, through other parts of the research is the expectation of how quickly they were answered, and the effort they went through to have that conversation varied tremendously, both depending upon the nature of their inquiry and of course the type of company they were dealing with. And again, the expectation of how long is too long or acceptable, as I'll come on to, also changed quite a lot. What was interesting is we did a study last year, which actually showcased a comparison between 2018 and 19, again, across all those channels. This was a different study that we conducted. And I then put the results from last month's study in the blue column on phone, and you can see that things are indeed on the decline. In fact, 11% down on 2018 for those consumers that were using the phone as a first point of contact for their preferred method of contact. But of course, and maybe of no surprise to many of us on today, the emerging channels of social, app-based, chatbot and IM were all indeed on the rise, 30% indeed, in fact, for instant messaging and 22% against chatbot. So there is no question that we're seeing a rise in digital and a slow, steady decline across the phone channel. And I've been in the call center industry for more than 20 years and have very carefully plotted how the phone is degraded. And we all heard about how, with the rise of AI a couple of years ago, it was going to be at the demise of the contact center, let alone the phone-based agent. But of course, that hasn't happened. And COVID has proven that we need and want to use the real-time phone channel when certain situations present themselves, more often when there's something which is immediate and urgent, in terms of my opinion. The challenge the call center faces today is how to align correct expectation with that and predict and thus portray the right image and set the correct expectation in different settings and situations. And that for me is one of the great challenges. So if we look at how that differs across just 3 industry segments, and the survey actually polled a total of 11 different industry segments, but here I'm just showcasing the automotive industry, consumer electronics and insurance. And you can see some stark differences across the preference as to where the channels are used. Now, it might be, again, pretty obvious to say that from an automotive perspective, 60% of the consumers poll wanted to use the phone, and conversely the opposite is true for those that wanted to visit the store to engage with an insurance claim. So there are some obvious conclusions to be leveled, but this once again proves though that the notion of applying some certain KPIs around every type of contact in every different industry just doesn't work. And I was recently talking to somebody about the age-old 80-20 measure of course, 80% of calls being answered in 20 seconds. And this just reminds me, depending upon the interaction type and the industry you're in, how that really is difficult to maintain and really is inappropriate in many different situations. If we then look at the willingness to self-serve, and obviously it's easy to say, well, to reduce customer effort, we should give them self-sufficiency wherever possible, give them the opportunity to get the information or transact the service in their own time, and indeed take their time and not be pressured into a certain routine or procedure. Now, that's not always possible, but again, looking at the different business segments, we can see the appetite to indeed do that. And looking at this study, we'll see that unsurprisingly, to buy our online shopping, more than nearly 3/4 of us are quite happy to do that completely online with little or no other interaction. The polar opposite is true when we're looking to buy a car or get our car serviced potentially, where nearly 2/3 of us are going to prefer to have some assisted customer journey to maintain that. And the others are obviously somewhere in between, depending on the subtleties of those particular solutions. And for many years, self-service has been applied as a mechanism to potentially deflect interaction or just provide a service out of business hours. And I think now there is a growing expectation across the emerging generation Z and alphas that are coming downstream that it should be reversed, and they will naturally gravitate to a self-service channel first and foremost, and they'll have a different set of expectations of how much effort they want to indeed expend to get the information using that. Whereas my mother would have a different perception, even if she chose to connect with her bank, as she's starting to do through online banking as an example. One thing though is clear, and again came shining out of the study, is that 30% of those surveyed did admit that they were waiting far too long to be connected. And as I said at the top of the session, COVID definitely saw our appetite and patience change. I do think now we're back to really where we were in terms of what we as consumers determine good service and acceptable wait times to be. But what I've seen for many years is the inability to transact and join a customer journey correctly across multiple channels manifest in the transition back to the phone call, even if the phone call wasn't the first channel of choosing. So you sent an email, you followed it up with a chat conversation, neither has satisfied the actual request, so you've actually reverted to the phone knowing it's going to take longer, but have concluded it's the only way you're going to get your answer resolved in a time that's relevant to you. So we get it wrong at the digital end. The phone call obviously comes back to bite, so to speak. So, you know, if we look at the question, are we more impatient? Here's some results, again, polled last year, looking back across actually 5 different countries, just so we can compare the UK to some of our neighbours across 2 interaction types, first of all. So between 2015 and 2019, we saw that the acceptable mean average wait time on the phone was 3 minutes, 17 seconds. And 44% of the British population believe that was acceptable, more in Spain, more in Italy, in fact, more everywhere except for the Germans. Today, if we look at, or the end of last year, 2019, half of the people surveyed expected the phone to be answered in less than 1 minute. So we're still falling well short, even in an average non-pandemic environment, of meeting customer expectation using the phone channel. And it excludes IVR handling time, I hasten to add. Email, by contrast, average is a 6-hour expectation. Last year, again, average was at more than 85% expected it to be answered in less than 1 day. And we've seen obviously that rise quite exponentially over the last 4 years. Whereas, you know, back in 2015, certain people were accepting of a 2 to 4 day response time. And we flipped that to more emerging channels, looking at the social channel, particularly around Twitter and Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp, for example. Less data to an extent, but you can see from last year, more than 60% expecting an answer within 30 minutes. And clearly from a chat perspective, more and more people expecting an immediate reply, 49 seconds being the time for which they would give up waiting in chat. And if we don't see a tweet reply within 2 hours and 50, then again, we're dissatisfied. And all this, of course, gets more complex when we look at the type of demographic of the individual that indeed might be using those said channels. And we have this plethora of ultimately 5 different generational subsets, each and every one of which has a different expectation personally of what technology they use, their appetite and expectation with that particular technology channel. I referred to Generation Z and Generation Alpha, as we're being called. And these 2 demographics alone have a very different approach to self-service and patience. And speaking from a father that has one of each, I can assure you that neither one which wants to wait in line on the phone, and certainly won't even wait in queue in the store to get certain piece of information they deem to be and should be readily available, as they often consume through using video and other social networks. So what does all this mean to us? Well, as I mentioned at Odigo, we're very much a forward-thinking, innovative solution, and our technology is very much based around this concept of a completely channel-less environment wherever possible. We can't ever step away from the fact we might have up to 6 or more different interaction points within a contact center today. But using the data afforded to the business, empowering the agent with said information, providing contextual responses, and my favorite term, personalization at every opportunity, gets you to a point of much more predictable, manageable processes to manage expectation and not treat every customer the same, or at least categorize them based on product type or problem type. And the way we do that is to look at automation when relevant. So again, I'm a big believer you can't just have a blanket process for every interaction. We need to look at what is relevant to the individual based on demographic and their problem and their service, to look at what might be automated and what not. Leveraging data, the question on the poll around, is it partly the agent's job? Well, absolutely, because if they don't have access to the tools and are presented to the data at the moment it's most relevant, like literally pushing and pulling records or product types or conversation histories or whatever the case may be, and the image you might not be able to see on screen now is an example of that. Even leveraging location data to determine where the customer might be is very important in terms of managing that timeline, keeping first call resolution as high as possible, and exceeding expectation in that you can actually solve my problem quicker than I expected. We leverage AI wherever possible to be smart. We look at sentiment analysis and different tools to, again, start predicting my state of mind, even in the sense of my mood. Am I going to be annoyed because I've actually been in contact with the brand already 3 times that day using a real-time channel? We look at why. That might determine who I speak to and the order of events that play out. And then again, as I mentioned, personalization is absolutely key. There is much more opportunity now to address the individual and not categorize them in the way I described. That for me is a very big win in exceeding expectation and managing expectations so people aren't as angsty and as impatient when they might have been when they're just put into a queue on a first in, first out basis for the same problem they've already been inquiring about for the early part of that week, for example. And then, of course, contextual routing, looking at the knowledge base to the earlier question, essential, having a central repository of both customer journey information, contact data, product information, and other journey history around how I've contacted the brand, potentially across multiple channels. It is key, again, to ensuring that we can be proactive when possible, but also set correct expectations that, okay, you are having a complaint. We need to be realistic about what we can do and when we can do it, and ensure that they are kept informed through proactive engagement as an example. So just to sum up and leave you a couple of takeaways. So, for me, as I mentioned, the phone is not going anywhere. We know as consumers it potentially will take longer to wait in line sometimes to speak to somebody live, but for many people that still is very important to them. There are ways in which we can make that engagement far easier by looking at information pertaining to my particular situation and making dynamic decisions on how that call in that instance is then routed. So each engagement isn't necessarily a repeat of the previous one. We can't ignore the rise of digital adoption. It's only going to grow and grow, particularly as the younger generation become of age and expect this to be first and foremost the commonplace channel of choice. I do believe AI has a role to play there, and that very much interlinks into knowledge and the data that's available to tools like bots. But once again, there is still a level of satisfaction that's expected. We can't just assume because it's somewhat one step removed in digital that there isn't still an element of expectation about time and effort using those services. One size absolutely does not fit all, and I think this is, for many businesses, their biggest challenge. You've got a growing diversity of consumers with changing expectations, more and more products, more and more competitors, and to give differentiation, we've seen it a lot recently, people will churn from brands to guarantee a better service and pay a premium for it. So something we all need to be very mindful of. Treating everybody individually, I think I've very much laboured that point. And then ultimately, effort is key to loyalty and retention. And Mark talked about that, and I couldn't agree more. There is a direct correlation to CSAT across loyalty across many brands, and our customers have seen that a lot. We've made subtle changes in the way in which they can provide communication channels and connect the dots better, and their CSAT has gone up quite considerably across many parts of their business. So not to be underestimated, not to be ignored, and great that 46% of you are focused on measuring that on a regular basis. And that's all I had, Rachel. I think that's hopefully about to time. So I'll hand over to you for any questions.
Fab, thank you very much for that, Neil. I think you're going to, well, firstly, thanks for sharing all your current research. Great hearing all those stats and everything. And I think you're offering an Odigo to health check your business. So let me put up that poll and you can explain a bit more.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, as I mentioned, every one of our clients is very different and the devil is in the detail. So we are able to come along and do a bit of a health check, look at some of your processes, your infrastructure as things stand, make suggestions of quick wins or maybe more complex changes, compare that to other results we found in other clients. So yeah, that's an open offer to anybody on today's webinar. I'm happy to facilitate that should you be interested, so please do let us know.
Brilliant. So I will end that and over to the chat room. I can see there's been lots of debate going on, so let's go start with the first question. So Charles has sent in asking, what do you think of a system where the call goes to triage first, then to a dispatcher to schedule the call with the technician? Neil, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, from a help desk perspective, or technical help desk particularly, maybe that's what this is referring to, then I've seen that on a number of occasions. Again, I think customers are accepting that not one person has all the information or is an expert in that particular field. So if it's, again, transparent, succinct, joined up, you don't have poor handovers like Mark was talking about, I think customers are very happy to do that. The key is make sure it goes through in one transaction, so you don't have to be called back ideally, and there's obviously succinct handovers to what's taken place in the first call, for example. So yeah, I mean, I'm fully supporting of that, more than have 3 different calls or 3 different interactions.
Brilliant, thank you. So Claire sent in a tip saying, do not assume fixing one thing for customers will reduce effort overall. It is a balance of several things. Answering phones quicker isn't great if you still can't resolve the issue. So Daniel's sent in a tip saying, I've seen a tip of what to look for in a knowledge base, and oops, sorry, I've got my thing over, an aspect which I've seen as really valuable. Find a solution which advisors can interact with, moderated of course. They can suggest edits and ask clarifying questions about the info. So Gemma sent in a tip saying, allowing agents to case, own and call customers back reduces customers' effort of having to make repeat calls to you. So we've got a question to Neil. So do these stats take into consideration the number of companies who removed phone as an option and pushed customers to email and chat for months during the pandemic? I think those were some of the ones you went through, Neil.
Well, we surveyed, there was 500 consumers on the CCMA research, so we weren't looking at companies, and specifically it was more customer segment, well, company segmentation, I should say. I actually don't know from the research that we polled between 2015 and 2019. I would expect they did include that because we know certain brands have, gone to great lengths to remove, first and foremost, a phone channel. So that will impact that 46% for certain. But I can check that and come back to you.
Fab. And a question to Mark. You said we should not focus on AHT, but don't you think high AHT will result to high call abandoned and calls waiting?
Yeah, there is an interrelationship, obviously, between all of these different metrics. And I think what I would say is don't use average handling time as the primary judgment, because it really is an efficiency measure. It is a cost management measure, which inevitably has a knock-on on the customer experience. So I think it does need to be monitored. A priority than customer metrics, which should always be the higher priority of focus.
Fab, thank you very much. So unfortunately we've reached the top of the hour, so we'd just like to ask in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about today's webinar? The winning tip, comes from Neil25, who said, we use an ongoing koi pond, like the US Shark Tank show, but without the big pitches forum, in which anyone in the business can suggest an improvement to, for instance, reduce customer effort. Very often the most and best ideas come from those working in our contact center, which helps drive engagement and empower the team. So congratulations. Just a reminder to complete the survey when you leave. It is only 4 questions long. And a reminder that we have taken a recording of today's webinar, and that will be available later on this afternoon. So next week is our final webinar of 2020. So you can still time to register on callcenterhelper.com/webinars. And if you do want to share with us any suggestions for webinar topics we should be including for next year, please just share them in the chat room, or there is an ongoing debate on LinkedIn as well. I just want to say thank you very much to our 2 brilliant speakers today. To Mark Gould from CP2 Experience, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here. Enjoyed it. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And to Neil Titcombe from Odigo, thank you very much for a great presentation as well.
Thanks, Rachel. You're very welcome.
Brilliant. And so we will see you next week. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.